here on another one of our last Mastery Monday calls. We're going to be continuing our weekly live streams, but we're going to be changing the name a little bit. But today we are here with Lance Allred, and he is. I was looking up his bio. He's got quite an interesting bio that we're going to get into a little bit. But before we do that, I want to make sure that you guys know the One Life Roadmap Journal is available on Amazon, both the adult edition and the student edition. So if you are looking to elevate your life, take your life to the next level, or you're just kind of looking to get on track after all this COVID stuff, go to onelifefullylived.org/journal. It'll take you straight to the Amazon link. You can get it on there in paperback. Like I said, there's an adult edition for anybody who is out on their way, whether they're just graduating from school or they are looking to kind of start over in their life, or we have a student edition for someone who's still in school, whether they're in middle school or high school, or even in the early years of college, and they're looking to kind of dial in their future. So onelifefullylived.org/journal, and you guys will be able to get that for yourself. All right, so we have an awesome guest today, and I think I'll just read the bio that came up on here. And we're here with Lance Allred, and he is the first legally deaf player in NBA history. He's an international motivational speaker. He's an author. He has a TED Talk called "What's Your Polygamy?" It says he's also Mexican American, which is awesome. That's great that made it there on the bio on Google. And he also has a new, or not a new foundation, but a foundation called the Courage and Grit Foundation, and a new podcast called the New Alpha Male, and someone who has, personally made an impact on Tim. So I'd love for you to share, Tim, just really quickly, what caught your eye about Lance and why you thought he might resonate with a One Life community.
Yeah, I was introduced to Lance, recommended to listen to a podcast he was on called The New Alpha Male by my spirit coach, Janai Lane. And when Janai Lane asks me to do something, I do it because usually she's spot on. And what struck me, few things that struck me with Lance is his amazing balance of male and female energy, especially in sports. And then, I'm in a tribe called Abundance, and we can be, in our heads a lot and just, trying forcefully to get things done. And I loved his different ways of going about this, number one. And number two, I loved some of the things it said he played in the NBA, and some of the things he did to prepare himself before his games, I thought were just amazing, of how the unique steps he took to get in state. So, and if you know it, life is all about state, how you show up. And I think Lance is just a great person for our community to learn from. I think he has a lot to teach us, especially in the times we find ourselves in, of just allowing rather than pushing, and finding that great balance of the two. So those were the things that struck me the most. And let's quit talking ourselves and get it over to Lance.
Yeah. Guys, if you guys are catching this live and you guys have questions for Lance, please throw those down in the comments and we'll try and catch them. Or if you're catching this on the podcast or on YouTube, throw them in the comments and we'll try and do our best to answer them. So Lance, catch us up, because the bio there, I'm sure, doesn't do justice to the story behind the bio. And so we were talking off camera before we started chatting about, you asked me to tell me a little bit about me, but I think I want to throw the question back to you. And, when you think about who you are, or when, someone asks Lance, tell me about you, where do you start? What piece of the journey do you tell them, or can you kind of let us into that part of the journey?
Good question. I've never been asked this question before. What's my preferred way of letting you into the narrative and the story of my life? I would sum that up by saying I happen to be a writer who played basketball. Not a basketball player who also was a writer. Growing up in a polygamous commune, we didn't have the medical amenities to think about things called the RH factor. So I was born nearly dead. And my mother took me out of the commune, where I was basically saved by a Johns Hopkins resident in rural Montana, there at a tiny hospital in Hamilton, Montana. And I was very lucky to be alive. I was in the incubator for about 3 weeks. And due to that process, the nerves in my ears were damaged. So I have about 80% hearing loss. And being in rural Montana, there were no amenities to learn sign language. So I had to be thrown into the fire every day to wear these big giant hearing aids as a kid. They were analog. They weren't digital back then. So I had constant splitting headaches and being reminded I wasn't normal by having to be in speech therapy 3 times a week. A lady would come into our town, into our commune, and work with me on speech therapy, reminding me every day that there was something wrong with me. And through that process, I became very introverted, to wanting at any turn taking my hearing aids out and just living in a quiet world, but living in between worlds, not fully of the signing, not fully of the hearing and speaking. And that's always forced me to be reflective and to sit back and watch people and watch humans. I'm fascinated with humans, and I'm fascinated with culture. And I tell people, culture is our biggest blind spot. Culture drives our stories and it drives our fears. And so much of our problems in life come from our fears that are based from the stories that we're trying to fulfill. And we give ourselves anxiety, depression, trying to make reality meet our expectations or our cultural expectations and stories, rather than being brave enough to ask, do I know these stories to be true? That is a simple, easiest pain point release I can give anyone. Being brave enough to ask, do I know these stories to be true? And those are the kind of thoughts that came into my head when I was a boy in a polygamous commune. And so looking back, yeah, at the time I hated the fact that I had hearing loss and I was trying to fit into a world that I've made peace with, that sometimes I'm just too big to fit in my 6'11" frame. And learning, strangely enough, that there I was trying so hard to speak so people could communicate with me, but learning the number one thing is just listen. The skill of being able to listen to people, but also listen to your intuition and just listen to earth and what life is teaching you. Those are the kind of skills or innate inklings, I guess, that I developed as a kid with the hearing loss, that I look back and I'm very grateful for the hearing loss now, for the perspective it's allowed me to have on life and a different angle in my fascination again with humans. And when my father blew the whistle on child abuse and money laundering, I was 13 and we escaped from the polygamous commune. We were in hiding for about 6 months. That year, 8th grade, I grew from 5'10" to 6'4". And there I was sleeping a lot, but I lost all my cousins who were my best friends. And the junior high coach saw me walking down the hall of this new school. And there I was, a fish out of water, having to learn how to communicate with people from a different religion, a different world, different beliefs. Didn't have the blood buzz anymore of my 400 first cousins around me all the time. But luckily there was basketball that allowed me to segue out of that and to develop further communication skills and always just watching people's bodies. And I tell people, words matter, but words can lie, but the body never lies. And so my ability to watch the body, and is the right shoulder leaning forward, is the left foot forward, tells me, are they more masculine, are they more feminine, or are they trying to be aggressive or assertive by watching people? Those skills allowed me to be a team captain on most of my teams around the world as I played professionally for 10 years. And being able to really meet people where they're at, cross cultures, being able to break through culture and hit people at their personal need and at their spiritual needs. And it's good to have a tribe to belong to, but sometimes with tribal mentality, we can't see the forest through the trees. And getting people to see things from the greater whole, understanding how personal and impersonal it is at the same time. And so through that very, hey, let's face it, as far as deaf polygamous kids making the NBA, I've sort of cornered that market. That's my niche. from that angle, from that crazy life that I've had, I've been privileged to live with. I have a lot of gratitude for the path that creation set me on. I've been able to take so many of those experiences and so many of those heartbreaks and alchemize them as a teacher to help people gain more clarity on themselves and permission to live the life they want to live.
So beautiful. And, you know, I'd love for anybody who's watching live to reflect on and share what they connected and resonated with most, because I think all of us, you know, can find bits of your story to connect with. So the One Life, you know, our core principles have evolved over the last several years, but one thing that have really emerged is there's two core concepts. The first is the fulfillment triangle, and that's what we are basically our starting point. You know, when someone is charting or creating their roadmap, they need to chart their, you know, pick their destination. And the way that we prescribe to do that is by finding out what your passions are, what your talents are, and where there's opportunity in the market. And within that is fulfillment, right? And within that you can find fulfillment. And so for you, I'm curious, you know, you seem to just be kind of rolling with things as they happen and finding opportunities, you know, as they come. But I'm curious how that played out in your life. You know, you said you happened to be a writer who was a basketball player. You know, you obviously were talented enough and you saw an opportunity. So how does passion play into that, or what was that journey like for you? You know, finding your way amidst all these different challenges.
People always come up to me now as an inspirational speaker and say, hey, can you get my son to be passionate about basketball? You can't. People would always kind of downplay my achievements, especially early on, and say, well, you can't teach height. And I tell them 6'11" gets you a college scholarship. After that, you're on your own. You can't teach height, but you also can't teach heart. You can't. If everyone had the ability to work hard, they would. So therefore, it's a talent. In this day and age of intellect and data, we're trying to show that the smartest person in the room is the most important person. No. It's the person who has passion, to your point. My job isn't to tell people what they're passionate about, it's to help them understand what they are passionate about for themselves and help them go chase it as though they were on fire. That is your job in life. As Joseph Campbell would say, follow your bliss. And there were many motivations that kept me going to make the NBA. I didn't make the NBA until I was 27 years old. That's 7 years longer than the average player. That's 7 years of heartbreak and disappointment and injuries and choosing to get back up every single time I got knocked down. With no magic wand or potions or formula, just choosing. No essential oils, just choosing to get back up every single time because I choose to. And there are no shortcuts in life. You have to, how do I say this without sounding dogmatic? You have to earn your shortcuts. Meaning you have to blaze your trail, your own trail. And through your own experience, you look back and you say, oh, okay, there's a shortcut there that doesn't have to be this long next time I go through the process. People are trying to live vicariously through other people's time hacks and cheat sheets, trying to bypass the process. And fulfillment is a funny thing to talk about. I started writing down my goals when I was 14. That year I started playing basketball because my older sister was in medical school. So there she was, this girl who grew up in a polygamous commune that was telling her, no, women don't get education, let alone become medical doctors. And she said, watch me. And when we were in hiding, she got the letter of acceptance to the University of Utah Medical School. And she saw how much I began to care about basketball. And she said, okay, Lance, here's what you do. You write down your goals and you put them above your light switch. And every time you touch your light switch on or off, you read your goals out loud. Maybe a little OCD, but every goal I have written down in my life has come true in some way, shape, or form. And the process of that is, well, I'll say it more honestly. Again, there are many motivations that at the age of 5 in my polygamous commune, it was impressed upon me by a Sunday school teacher and other factors that God had made me deaf as a form of punishment for being unfaithful in the pre-existence. And so I had this very warped perception of an angry God, of a God that I had to earn love. And therefore, I lived in a world where I had to earn love. A very Western, linear A to Z process that is, okay, everything must be earned. There's no grace at all. And I lived in that world. Even after we broke away from polygamy, I still had this perception of a very angry God. And so I began to develop this narrative, this story, without questioning the original story. Do I know this angry God to in fact be real? But as a kid, we're absorbing all this information, taking it at face value, because we don't have the proper discernment skills in our frontal lobe at the time to say, wait, this isn't correct. And so I loved basketball. That was one of my motivating factors. I loved belonging to something. The need to belong is a perfectly healthy and essential feeling that we humans have as we're pack animals, but we're also being asked to evolve out of the tribal mentality as we move into a global online world where we are much more globally conscious. But also, love of the game and all that, there was fear was a main motivating factor as well, to be 100% honest with everybody. Fear that if I didn't make the NBA, be the first deaf player in NBA history, I would be a failure. And I had to learn how to play basketball in a very different way. I couldn't play with my hearing aids, and so I had to learn to keep my head on the swivel, process in body language, and be the one to communicate as the center. Luckily, I could be the one underneath the rim talking on defense, telling everyone, pick right, pick left. And that was my job. This isn't to say that I wasn't hit hard many, many times on screens that I just didn't hear coming my way, but choosing to get back up every single time. I was probably concussed more than I wanted to admit. Now, those factors were all motivating factors and writing my goals. And I can remember my very first goals very clearly. I, Lance Allred, will start from my high school team by my junior year. I will average a 3.5 GPA. I would get a college scholarship to the University of Utah. And they came true. And it turned into a nightmare at the University of Utah. And I'm going to lead into a conversation now of fulfillment. And all of us have had a dream come true. And if it wasn't an immediate disenchantment, after the excitement wears out after about a month or so, the unfulfillment comes of the reality never able to live up to our expectations. This is confirmation of the truth that the journey is more important than the outcome or the result. I know we want results. We want to have financial stability. We want to be able to live the life we want, free of an impressive job or a job that's sucking your soul. Yet we do put unrealistic expectations on ourselves that we can't even get into the process and enjoy the alchemy of our spiritual growth. Not just in this world, but in the worlds beyond as we continue to evolve, because eternal progression is the only logical thing that makes sense in all of this as we continue to progress towards unity, to clarity. And when I got to the NBA at the age of 27, I remember I was shooting a free throw in front of 16,000 people. And a thought came to my head. And it was, wait, is this it? Is this, I don't feel any different. Is this the best that it gets? And I banked in my free throw. I was so rattled. I didn't bank in my free throws, but I was just, I had a short circuit in my brain and my body. I just chucked it. And everyone laughed because they thought I did it on purpose, because I was a bank expert. I did bank shots. And severe disenchantment came because I was expecting the fear of an angry God to go away, and I would feel love and all these things. But what was really happening, looking back, is that we all had trauma. Trauma is a rite of passage of life. And in that wounding of those different phases of ourselves, we have bought into the Hollywood stories that there's a soulmate out there or a happy ending that's going to heal our wounding, which keeps us in the child or victim archetype, that someone else needs to save me. Rather than understanding that when you move into the sovereign or the warrior archetypes or the teacher archetypes, the opposite of the victim is the teacher. We see a lot of victims on social media right now. We're not seeing a lot of teachers. The victims stay in the wounding. The teachers alchemize the wounding to teach and empower others. I was playing basketball from a victim archetype, Carl Jung's four survival archetypes. So the victim, the prostitute, the child, and the saboteur. I did all of them, but especially the prostitute. As a gladiator, a prostitute, I was giving my body for money every night for people to be entertained. Thinking if I played hard enough and I played well enough, they would love me. And they did love me when my stats were perfect. But that conditional love would soon turn into humping and unsavory comments if I ever had a bad night. Living in the world of conditional love, learning the hard way that love is either unconditional or it's not love at all. And so through this journey of searching for love, from an angry God, from an angry, broody community that was very conditional as a child, of dogmatic religion, through many bumps and bruises and scars along the way and deaths of many dreams, learning the hard way that for me, fulfillment or success is clarity, not the money in my bank account or the car or boats that I have. It's, do I have the clarity and the wherewithal and presence of mind every day to catch myself when I'm operating from fear that if I don't get this job, oh my gosh, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. And then just stopping and taking it back. Well, if it doesn't happen, what does it say about me? Well, it says I'm not savvy, I'm not successful. Do you know that actually to be true? No, I don't. And so fulfillment for me is clarity, always clarity. And when you operate from clarity, like the moments that came to me as an athlete, when you're in the zone. When you're in the zone as an athlete, I know a lot of you probably watched the Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance on ESPN. When you see him in the zone like that, I can tell you as a player who played there in those arenas for 10 years, Michael Jordan wasn't thinking. He was being. His brain, the only use for his brain was to quickly process past experience, but that actually turns into instinct in the gut. Brain is logic, heart is intuition, gut is instinct. The athlete uses all three. And the athlete is masculine and feminine. Jordan was masculine when he passed the ball. When he shot the ball, the great push-off shot on Byron Russell, that's a masculine act. You push someone and you shoot. When he passed it off to Steve Kerr to win an NBA final, that's a feminine act. And so we live in this hyper-masculine world of data where everyone's trying to press and press and press and press. But as an athlete, as a basketball player, if I'm shooting the ball every damn time I touch it, I'm going to get benched. If I'm passing the ball every time I touch it, I'm going to get benched. Why? Because you've become easy to guard. Being able to have a healthy balance of masculine and feminine, keeping the opposition on their heels. As far, okay, what's going on? Is he going to go right? Is he going to go left? And I was able to score. I scored more with my left hand than I did my right hand, even though I'm right-handed as a post player, because I realized I'm not the most athletic guy, but I have to learn to be cerebral and learn to be creative. Maybe that's the writer in me, the artist coming out, because I didn't want to get bored playing basketball either. So let's keep people interested with my little left-hand hook shots. That keeps the defense on their toes. Left hand is feminine, right hand is masculine. Left brain, masculine to the right hand. Learning to play those ways, as we could see Jordan do, that was him in the zone, never in his head. But when you're in the zone, is when you have completely surrendered control. You're not aiming your shots. If you're aiming your shots, you're thinking, and you're going to miss. When you're in the zone, you're just allowing what is to be. And you have the complete trust in the time you have invested in your craft, but also in the trust in what is, in God, the zone, creation, whatever words you want to call it. When you have tapped into the ephemeral grid and you have stepped out of the masculine logic plane and you stepped into the great mystery. That's what the athlete is doing when they're in the zone. And there's many ways I would practice, to have the breathing techniques before games to help me shut the brain off. And this isn't to say that we're completely headless, but okay, we have stats and we have scouting reports to give us an idea of what to expect. But you don't see us athletes when we come out into the first quarter and the team's running new plays that weren't in the scouting report. We're not going to say, oh, that's not fair. What would the stats told us you're going to do this? And yet we live in a world now where people are entitled to their expectations because the stats say, when we all have learned the hard way, stats can be skewed at any point to prove anyone's agenda. And that's why so many people have had a hard time adjusting to COVID, because we've been living in a stat world where we believed we were safe, where we believed we were in control. But having traveled around the world for 10 years, picking up a lot of crazy things like Zika virus and everything, learning that that's part of the deal as a human being. That's what we sign up for. Illness, plague, death. And to think that somehow I'm entitled not to have it is hubris. And trust me, the gods are laughing when we're operating with hubris. And so to answer your question, Hector, I know I went up on a long thing, it's learning to operate in the clarity, or operating for clarity and from clarity. And being able to, or having the presence of mind to be in the zone as much as I can be, where I'm not operating from expectation, where I allow things to be what they are. And when I am in that place of allowance, I have the clearest picture to make the next best move. If I'm sitting thinking about my last 5 shots, saying, oh man, I got to make up my next 5 to get even, I'm always playing from behind. And I'm not being a good teammate. But if I'm able to say, I missed that last shot because that was supposed to happen, I take full accountability for it. All I can do now is be present, knowing I'm only as good as my next shot. Wallowing in self-pity and guilt is faux accountability. True accountability is owning the situation and the choices you made to get there. And then owning, I'm going to do my best to show up for those that I care about and those who are relying on me to make the next best decision with the information I have at the time. And that's being able to operate from clarity and understanding that my worth is never attached to an outcome. Because again, the unfulfillment that I felt many times in the achievement of my goals and dreams has confirmed that the process, the evolution of who I am, not only in the physical, but in the spiritual context, is what's most important, and not necessarily the actual measurable or quantifiable outcome but the quality of the process.
That was, I want to say magical is the word that came to mind. We have some questions that popped up in the comments there, but Tim, I want to just give you a chance to respond. And there was a lot in there that I think is just so powerful.
Yeah, there really was. It's great stuff, Lance. Thank you so much. A couple things you said that struck me. I'd love to hear your definition when you say permission to live your best life. What do you mean by that?
Permission to live your best life is the self-actualization of being a leader of your own life. I tell people bluntly, with all the corporate consulting and speaking that I do across the country, I sit in a lot of C-suites. And like I was as a basketball player, whenever I walked into a new team mid-season, within 5 minutes, I could tell from people's body language who was the giver, who was the taker, who's the person that's never going to pass the ball, who's the coach's pet, by watching people's body language and patterns. And the concept of leadership in this, where I'm going, is that I see a lot of people posturing and puffing their chests and trying to act like leaders, thinking I read this book from this author, so therefore I'm an expert on leadership. We all have that friend who tries way too hard to be funny, that they're just not funny, because you can smell the insecurity on them. Same thing for people that say they want to be leaders. The people that are trying way too hard to be leaders aren't leaders. Real leadership, self-actualized leadership, is someone who is, as to answer Tim's question, permission to live your best life, is someone who is brave enough to say, I choose boldly to detach myself from the stories, from the cultural expectations that expect me to play a role, to keep everyone else's stories safe. I'm going to be brave enough to step out of the tribal narrative where I'm expected to play a role and blaze my own trail. Hell or high water, if I have to do it alone, I will. And that's what inspires people. That kind of vision of whether it's a new job or a new business or just a new lifestyle, whatever it is, you are being brave enough to step out of your comfort zone, willing to do it alone, willing to lose a marriage if you have to. That kind of passion is what inspires people. And if people know that they don't, you really don't need them to come along, it's like a magnet. They're going to say, I want what that guy has. He's going somewhere and he has a vision. And the fact that he is so committed to it, that he would do it alone if he had to, I'll follow that. Whereas a lot of people think leadership, again, is being the smartest guy in the room. People don't care how much you know. They care if you care. They want to know, what price have you paid in life, in the rite of passage that we all go through in this life, to self-actualization, to clarity. And it's not an easy path to walk. And yet everyone's trying to take shortcuts again from time hacks and podcasts and books on leadership, thinking that you can logic it. Head, heart, and soul. You need all of them. But head is probably the least inspiring. Stats don't inspire people. The humanity does. Do you care about other people around you? And one thing I'll say about leadership too, confidence and humility are two sides of the same coin. In my 10 years of pro basketball, I had one coach ever truly apologize to the entire team in front of everybody. And after that moment, I would run through a brick wall for that coach, and I still would, because his humility inspired me. His humility to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm just doing my best to lead, and I'll take any feedback. You can have the humility to accept feedback and not be a doormat. But we live in this fear-based Western society that grew up in the Cold War era, that if I take any feedback, someone's going to exploit me and stab me in the back. It shows I'm weak. No. The ability to admit that you don't have all answers and you're just a human takes great strength. The ability to be vulnerable and show this is where I'm limited takes great strength. And that strength and humility is what inspires people in leadership. Leadership for those around you and leadership in your personal reflections as you're sitting there with every heartbreak and every accomplishment. Being able to say, wow, look what we did. And I'm learning, the more that I learn in life, I learn how little I know. And that balance of the internal humility with your external world is self-actualized leadership and permission to live your best life.
That's so beautiful, Lance. And you know, that is so missing in leadership today, is that humility piece. It's like it's like that never let them see you sweat thing. And it's just so messed up, and intuitively people listening to this are going, of course that's the way it should be. But look all over in every, every realm, especially in politics, no one can say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. It's just so missing today. And it's, boy, that's the combination of the head and the heart. And I love how you add in the gut. That is such a huge piece of the whole thing. So, hey, I have one more question for you, and I know there's others, Hector, so I won't take this over. But we have a lot of people in the One Life community who are choosing a different way, who are selling their homes and buying motorhomes, and some of them choosing to put these motorhomes, like I got a friend, Matt Piper, who's helping start almost like a commune outside of and it's a different way of living. And I'm just curious if you're seeing this within your world and what your thoughts are of that, of people choosing to make, their own way and just taking these conventional rules that society says, I have to live here. I have to have the house. I have to have, and we're seeing a lot of people say, you know what? Why? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a beautiful thing, and it's necessary. I won't get into all my astrological work that I do, but the timing of it is right on time as far as the Phoenix energy to our psyches right now. That is death and rebirth, the death of the dreams, the death of the stories of the 20th century that was plagued by war. And then we have to quickly put a Band-Aid on all that wounding and build, achieve. And so it was a hyper reaction to all the trauma of the world wars that we stepped into the Cold War era, where we have to be all corporate and build things to justify it. Losing sense with our humanity and giving ourselves permission to grieve. I mean, we really didn't as an American society. We didn't allow Europe or Germany much to do it either. It's like, nope, we have to get to work because this is too traumatic to even look at. And now, as the energy of the earth is demanding us with the COVID, and this is us operating from the greater whole. Individual mentality in COVID is, oh my gosh, am I going to die and my needs going to be met? Tribal is, oh, Republican versus Democrat, we're all idiots. Greater whole is, I am just a guest here on planet Earth at this time. And we're all getting slapped in the face. And we're all being asked to take this moment of silence that has been forced upon us to really sit back and reflect and reassess and ask, what is it that I really want to achieve here in this lifetime? What is my actual purpose? That's seeing it from the greater whole. And those who can operate from the greater whole are those who are doing best right now. That we're able to not spend so much time on Facebook or social media, or at least operate from a group like this, One Life Fully Lived on Facebook, where it's a group that's about positive messages and trying to help us stay in the greater whole conscience. And so for me as well, here I was transitioning out of basketball because I was going through a divorce and didn't want to be away from my son. And so with no real idea what to do next, I've written a couple books. People ask me to come speak. I'm like, I hear you can make money public speaking. Let's give it a shot. And I love public speaking. When I'm on a stage, it allows me to be in the zone. I never pre-wrote my keynotes. I approached it like an athlete, to get out of my head and to allow the heart and the gut to assess what the crowd was responding to, and to allow downloads of information to come out. Basically, everyone was my therapist, is what was happening. And as I learned to process it all, I fell in love with it. And obviously some of it's genetic, because when my grandfather was the founder of my polygamous cult that I grew up in, obviously I had the gift of gab, like he did. It comes down genetically. And there were some things there, but I also fell into the rat race of social media marketing and competing. And okay, who's the best speaker? Why is this person getting likes? Are they buying likes? Are they cheating? Or is it authentic? I don't know. And you get really confused about social media. And there I was, a lot of time getting lost and losing my passion. And now it's time like this, to answer your question, Tim, it's like really making me say, what does make me happy? Do I have to always be speaking in front of people, or is a life of invisibility, of quiet empowerment, of being a benefactor to others, far more fulfilling for me? And so to have these kind of questions are perfectly natural and healthy and necessary. And so hats off to people for being willing to say, I'm going to sell my house and go be a vagabond. I did the vagabond thing for 10 years around the world. So I was happy to settle down. I had the wherewithal to know too, keep it simple. When I bought my home and moved out of the house I was renting after my divorce, I downsized. I cut my possessions in half to release myself from any weight of trying, because our possessions are reflections of our time that we invested in our job. And so we get emotionally attached to them. I can't let that go. Otherwise, I worked 6 months for nothing. And we want to have meaning for that time we invested, which is completely understandable. But I downsized, cut in half. But then I said, you know what? I need to convert my basement into a separate Airbnb. And so my Airbnb, having the wherewithal to know I don't need the biggest house, keep it simple, keep it safe, as to what the people you referred to are doing, freeing themselves from heavy weight. I took a different route of having an Airbnb that pays my mortgage. So that right now, even during COVID, I'm not freaking out. But it took discipline to build my own Airbnb with my own hands. It took a year. And that kind of mentality that we're being asked to live in a much more simple life, with less clutter distracting us, is necessary at this time, because that allows us to be intuitive, reflective, keeping our heart healthy and open, and having the humility to understand that we're just guests here. That this narrative that somehow we're the most intelligent beings in the universe is completely ridiculous. That we're all a mindless accident is just as arrogant as the ultra religious person to think that they can put God inside of a box. Just getting into the middle of understanding that in the extremes, they delude themselves with absolute truth. They're getting into the middle, which is where I don't know anything. And I'm going to put myself in a position to be in that space where I can learn, continue to learn, and do my best to help others with it.
I want to honor what you said, and there's a couple of comments in here from our live viewers just about how impactful the conversation has been. One question that came in, and I want to get into this before we get out of here because I think it's important, came from one of our One Life Contributor Club members and also one of our certified guides. So she's someone who's actively out trying to bring One Life to her community. She says that she often talks to her parent friends in their affluent community that their kids seem disadvantaged because they have less of an opportunity to develop grit. She says that she works to expose and engage them through community service and giving back. But her question is, Lance, what's your advice to help them make these kids hungry and develop passions in a distracted world?
Passions in a distracted world. Oh, it's hard. As a 6-year-old, I have a 6-year-old, and it's doing my best to pay attention to every subtle little thing he suggests. Oh, Dad, I want to do karate. And doing my best to find a place that's affordable, so therefore it's not some privileged vortex we're living in. That he's in a place where he's always exposed to kids from all socioeconomic classes. And the thing is, I have always been sensitive to, with so much gratitude to my teammates through the years. Being the token white guy on many teams, learning and understanding, wow, okay, I'm kind of the minority here. And instead of me thinking that makes me entitled to something that, oh yeah, now this is like, wow, I'm glad I have this experience to know what it may feel like. I'm glad of being pulled over by a police officer in Venezuela and shaken down for money and being really afraid, giving me perspective of being able to say, oh, wow, that helps me put myself in another person's shoes when they're pulled over by a police officer. And always putting myself and my son, putting them in places where they can be exposed to other people's walks of life. I tell people resort traveling is not traveling. That's just bubble hopping. Real travel is finding ways to immerse yourself in every community that you go into, in any country around the world, where you're able to meet people where they're at and have some humanity with them. And so I didn't come from a lot of money. But luckily I acknowledge that as a white kid in Utah, I was able to blend in as a teenager. And I don't lose anything by admitting I had that privilege. I don't lose any power. I don't lose any masculinity. To be able to say to people, I see you, and I see what this has cost you. People are so afraid to say that because they think, oh, if I say I see you to someone saying Black Lives Matter, then they're going to want this and they're going to want this and they're going to take my Christianity and everything. Like, wow, buddy, that's quite the slippery slope or downward spiral of fear that you're operating in. There's a lot of stories attached there. Should we process them? You lose nothing by showing compassion to another. Absolutely nothing. And I would advise anyone who's trying to figure out, okay, how do I get this kid to be passionate about something? It takes an edge and time of being able to watch them. I know kids get passionate about video games. Every kid says they want to be a YouTuber or a video gamer. And it takes a lot of work to really sit them down and ask them, okay, bud, outside of video games or YouTube, if we could do one thing right now, what would be the most exciting thing we could do? And hear what they say. And if they tell you it's karate, if they tell you it's horseback riding, if they tell you it's painting, to tell you it's hiking, that may not be what they end up doing right now, but it gives them permission to start following their bliss. It gives them the skills to start recognizing what gets them excited. And oh, my mom or my mentor gave me permission that it's okay to take 3 hours out of my day and go do this thing. That's developing a skill set of allowing people to learn to bracket their time and set aside time for their passion. So it's not necessarily our job to define for people their passion or our job to help them figure out what their final passion is. But as mentors, it's our job to give them the soft skills of self-recognition and self-soothing and self-fulfillment to help them follow their passion. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that question came from Kala Shah, a big part of the One Life community.
Thank you, Kala.
Lance, I just want to honor you by reading some of the comments that came in live. Felicia Jones, she's another longtime One Lifer. She said, I could listen to Lance for hours. Thank you so much for keeping it absolutely real during this conversation. It made me stop and ponder numerous times today. Sound life advice.
Thank you.
Kala said, thank you, Lance, for affirming heart-centered leadership. It's what the world really needs. And Alexandra, who hopped on and organized all this, she had some great words to say as well. Tim, is there anything else you wanted to, as we round out here, is there anything else you wanted to circle back to or to touch on again? I think you're muted still.
Oh, was Tim muted? Oh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, the one other thing I'd love for you to touch on is fulfillment in life is clarity. You could, I thought that was such an amazing statement, and I'm sure a lot of people might be confused by what you mean by clarity. You know, One Life is all about helping people find their most fulfilling life. I just thought that was such a unique way to state it. And if you might go a little deeper on, what do you mean by fulfillment in life is clarity?
Life is clarity. Clarity is being able to many things. At any given moment, stop and ask, am I operating from fear? Am I trying to fulfill a story? Am I projecting a wound or a trauma onto someone else to save me when it's my job to heal myself as an empowered leader of my own life? I've dealt with obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, and I had a lot of victim in me at times where I was looking for that magical soulmate out there to complete me and take my pain away. And that's why so many marriages fail, because people put all these unrealistic expectations on another person to heal them, to be responsible for their happiness, and that's inhuman. The only thing a real human can achieve or be responsible for is their own happiness. And being able to check those stories, just as pornography releases a dopamine drug in our brain, romantic movies do the same. Yet one's culturally acceptable and one remains in the shadow. And so a lot of people, men and women, have these Hollywood stories that there's someone there to save me and take my pain away. And they continue to be unfulfilled. Because again, after the dopamine high, the drug releases, people mistake satisfaction for happiness. Satisfaction is just that dopamine release. And they think it's happiness because Hollywood told us that's happiness. To me, happiness is clarity, where I have the permission at any moment to stop and say, do I want to continue on this business path that I've been chasing for 2 years? If so, why am I doing it? To prove my doubters wrong? Am I operating from spite right now? Okay. As I learned, spite's a great motivator, but when you get to the end and you get that trophy, empty calories. You can still fill that big hole. It's not nearly as ever as satisfying as you hope it to be. And being able to ask every moment, what is my intention and what is my driving factor? and having the bravery to cut your losses when you need to. My parents showed this to me. My father was 42 years old when he blew the whistle on child abuse. He was the heir apparent to our religious group. He built homes for free for the cause since the age of 19 in our utopian society. He spent thousands of hours being a theologian and doctrinaire, only to realize it was a lie. And they were brave enough to blow the whistle and cut their losses, and they lost everything. And yet I had so many aunts and uncles, some who weren't even stuck in polygamous marriages. Luckily, we were monogamous. The second wife had left a few years before. But these people couldn't let go of the idea that my grandfather was the prophet, because they needed to believe they were special. And people put themselves through so much abuse, physical, emotional, and spiritual, to hold on to the story that I'm special, rather than checking the story and saying, why do I need the story to be special? I'm already unique as I am. My DNA says so. There's only one me. And my parents having the bravery to cut their losses and go live a new life, empowering their 5 kids, me being the youngest, to go live exceptional lives as leaders. That's the legacy. And my father has recently been diagnosed with early onset dementia. But the clarity of knowing that at any moment, I have permission to stop and ask myself, does this serve me anymore? Does this fulfill me anymore? Am I living my life for me? Or am I living my life for other people's stories? And being brave enough to say, I choose to operate for people who want to be with Lance, not for the role that I may play in their story. Stepping out of the prostitute or gladiator archetype, stepping out of the child, stepping out of the victim archetype, and moving into the sovereign archetype, moving into the teacher archetype. Archetypes are the psyches within all of us, are the roles we play in every room or situation to belong. And I'll add, this is my definition of integrity. Integrity is integration of all aspects of who we are. Being the same person in every room that you walk into, where all your archetypes are there, but you're able to call forth the one that is most needed. Do I need to be a teacher right now? Or do I need to be a support right now? But still treating everyone as the same person, treating everyone the same, no matter what room I walk into. That's integrity. And that's another thing my parents taught me. And that's why they became a threat to people in power. Because you would think in a socialist polygamous commune, everyone would be treated exactly the same, right? No. Having the bravery to be fully integrated and treating everyone the same in every room that you walk into. That's integrity. And that takes clarity too. Clarity to stop and say, why do I want to tell this story? Do I want their sympathy? Do I want attention? Why do I need attention right now? Am I feeling insecure? Why am I feeling insecure? Okay, what story am I operating from? My mother told me I was ugly or I was fat. So I'm trying to disprove that, and I'm going to project it on all these people at this party by telling them the story about, or trying to make them laugh and make them think I'm funny. Or whatever, instead of integrating and going back and being a healer of your own life and saying, all right, that's my job to heal that wounding and check that story. And that clarity is what I strive for every day, Tim. Clarity to have that permission and the wherewithal to go inward every day and check myself every as much as I can, because no day is perfect. As an athlete, some days were good days, some nights were bad nights. And I tell people, enlightenment is not, oh, I'm no longer human, I'm above it all, I don't feel anything, which is what a lot of these new age guru stuff, they've been trying to sell this bullshit for way too long. Sorry to use my language, but that's how I feel about it.
We're real.
That oh yeah, I don't feel anything anymore because I'm enlightened. No, enlightenment is stamina, is endurance. Enlightenment is conditioning. Enlightenment is me as an athlete in my tip-top form, understanding I'm still going to get fatigued. But coach, call a 20-second timeout. Let me catch my breath and get back out there. It's recovery time. Enlightenment is recovery time. How quickly can you recover? It's not, oh, I don't feel anything. It's, I still have to be human, but what's my stamina? And how quickly can I recover? That's clarity and enlightenment.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Especially the part about, Om, and I'm above this all. No,
Yeah.
You wake up the next morning and the human condition kicks in.
Absolutely.
What then? Yeah.
Yes,
So,
you still have to play the game of life. You have to be in it and not of it. You have to be able to have one foot in global consciousness and one foot of, okay, I'm in the zone, I see everything clearly, and if I got sucker punched, if I got kneed in the back of the head, I can tell you as a basketball player, as a center, I got kneed so many times in my head, it's crazy. But like, okay, that hurt. It hurt. Or we lost the game. That hurt. I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to keep showing up every day, developing the stamina to keep playing on.
wow. Great stuff, Lance. Well, take us home here, Hector.
Well, there's so much wisdom, and I think it's just a testament, Lance, to the work that you've done on yourself, and all the time that you put in, because wisdom keeps pouring out. I would encourage all of you guys who are watching and all the entire One Life community, go follow Lance on all the socials. He's Lance Allred, ALLRED 41 on Instagram. He's also there is a TED Talk that you can watch. He also does some coaching, and he has a new book out. It's called The New Alpha Male. Actually, I don't know if it's how new it is, but there's a book out you need to get. It's called The New Alpha Male: How to Win the Game. Okay, so yeah, a couple months old, and there's a podcast to go along with it, if I'm not correct.
Oh, yeah, there's a QC podcast. But yeah, the Tammy Simon, she's the founder of Sounds True, my publisher. And so she and I had a great conversation that Tim happened to listen on. That's how Tim found me.
Yeah. I would encourage you to get into Lance's world, because you can just probably see from this conversation the amount of value that he has as well. So we appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys are in the One Life Roadmap community on Facebook, where you guys can get reminders about all these live calls. Next week, we have one more on Monday with Alana Pratt, and we have a few more in the hopper that you guys are going to really enjoy. So go follow Lance, go live your one life fully lived, and keep dreaming, planning, and living it.